Good morning, everybody from Bonnie, Scotland. I'm seeing the messages coming up, so I know that people can see us and can hear us. It's 10:30 here in the UK. I'm sure we've got people from all over, and not just the UK, but from other parts of the world joining us today. So welcome. It is so good to have you on. We are so honoured to welcome you. And this is the reason. This is the reason why we're here. Is for this lovely book, which some of you I know have advanced copies of. Some people are ordering. It is the second edition, of course, of Sabre-Tooth Tigers and Teddy Bears. And in just a moment, I'll be speaking to Suzanne about why the need for a second edition. And I think that will become very clear as we go through the morning. A little bit of housekeeping. And I can always repeat this. So we know that that some people can see us and can hear us, and most people can. We can't hear the participants, so I suggest that maybe you may be on mute, which is absolutely fantastic. A couple of things you will need. Hopefully you've decided to come in party mode, as I certainly have. Hence the jacket. It's not just something I wear on a Saturday morning. I wear it for all the top celebrations, and I've got to say that Suzanne is looking resplendent as well this morning. So Suzanne, I'll be speaking to you in just a moment. You will need, as per the instructions, you'll need something like this towards the end of the webcast, and no alcohol for me, far too early, but you'll be needing that for the toast. And also, I hope you have brought your, here's mine, hope you brought your teddy, or whatever gets you through the day. This is mine, actually called Dermot. Great. And I've had this fella for quite a number of years, and he's probably the only teddy I have in my collection that my 4-year-old lovable, beautiful Alsatian hasn't tried to chew. So I keep him very safe in my office. So hello from Dermot as well. So hello to everybody with their teddies. We'll be talking towards the end about a competition that's been run, that some children have been sending us pictures of their favourite teddies and some of the stories why. So we'll be talking about those as well. Hello to Fiona McMahon, whose husband is called Dermot as well. So there you go. Thank you for that message. So that's the agenda for this morning. As you've probably guessed by now, this is not a Spielberg flick, right? So we have no idea where this is going to go. It's not polished, it's not practiced, it's not rehearsed, it's purely live. And as you know, with live events, anything can happen. So without further ado, let's say good morning to the lady of the moment. Good morning, Suzanne.
Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you. We've got more than 200 of you registered to be with us, and that feels fantastic to be having a party across the miles.
I love your setting there at the back, and I've seen you as we've gone through. I think you've missed a trick, right? Because I've seen you now on numerous national TV stories, particularly on the BBC. When you've been talking about the situation that we find ourselves in, we are going to use the C word a few times this morning, but you've missed a trick, because I could see you. You should have had that on when you were broadcasting to the nation. What's going on?
Yes, but the book had not yet been launched, Gary. So I can do that in future, perhaps. But it seemed a lovely way of just celebrating this, to have all those books lined up behind me. So I'm glad you think it works.
It certainly does work. The BBC might have something to say about it the next time you're on the news, but I just love it. So thank you for asking me to be part of this celebration this morning. And I know that we've been thinking about the book launch pre-COVID, and gosh, you know, here we are. When you first started the rewrite, you know, we didn't, you know, I'm sure, you know, we'd never even think we were in this situation or this position, but before we start about the book, how are you getting on with things? How's life with you in lockdown?
Well, you know, I'm finding this pretty tough. I like my cafes, and I like seeing people, and I like being with people. So not being with people, it feels pretty tough to me. But it's really early on. I did that. I did a webinar on anxiety and how to cope with anxiety, and I talked in that about gratitude. And I now find myself that as a little ritual of the morning, every morning, the first tweet I put out is a tweet about something I'm grateful for and a tweet about laughter. And it just kind of emerged, but it's become a little ritual for me. And because I'm trying to offer that to other people, I'm actually offering it to myself as well. And so I think, will I continue that after lockdown? I'm really interested in what we will continue after lockdown that we have all learned and what will fade.
I'm seeing lots of messages coming up on the screen here, and they are, some of them are talking about your daily tweets, and people are very grateful for them. People who are on the who are on this right now. So I think that's a suggestion that you keep them going.
Well, do you know, sometimes I think maybe when people do things from the outside, it can look like it's easy, but there are some days I get up and I don't feel very grateful. I actually feel a bit resentful. So having a ritual of offering gratitude, because I know it makes a difference to other people, because people have said that, actually helps me to stay in a grateful place too. So there's something about understanding this stuff that it's not just because you feel it, it's because it's where you put your attention. It's because you make a determined choice that actually helps you to keep doing it. And that's really the power of rituals, is that they help to create a frame even when you don't feel it. Like this morning, I was delighted to bring my teddy. I was delighted to put on my teddy scarf, which was a gift from a head teacher. And so, that was another thing I talked about in that webinar, was how to dress yourself in things that make you feel supported. So this morning is a bit of a party atmosphere for me, drawing on things that I love to.
There's some great messages coming in. We've got somebody listening to us or tuning in from Ireland this morning. More messages coming in about your daily tweets. Keep them coming, and people very grateful for those. So let's keep going, and because it's not all about COVID. We are releasing ourselves from that today, and we're here to talk about this now. This was hand delivered to me, so this is a very special book. Very special book.
It's scary.
It's a very special book. Do you know? It's a second edition, right? It's a second edition, but it feels like two things, right? It feels like a rewrite, but it also feels like a journey that you've been on from the first published version of this, and there's 15,000 copies plus in circulation of the first edition. Is that a correct assumption? It just feels like there's a lot of new stuff in here, and it seems to chart the journey of other people who we'll speak to shortly, but also your journey over the past couple of years. Is that an assumption? Fair assumption?
Gary, that's true. For anybody who is new to my world, I was a research scientist and an academic at the University of Dundee. And what I study is the communicatory capacities the babies bring with them at birth. So babies are born already connected to other people. And I think this is fascinating and profound, and not everybody knows that. And so I got kind of frustrated that scientists had information that the rest of the public didn't always have. And I thought that they deserved to have that. And so next year, it will be 10 years somehow since I took a kind of a crazy decision, and I resigned from a post I love in order to try to communicate this science to the public, not knowing if it would work. But so it started a journey, a kind of step off the cliff into not knowing journey. And as more and more groups and organizations in different sectors asked me to come and speak, so police, social services, health, musicians, art, parents groups, all sorts of sectors asked me to come and speak. We needed ways to get that information out to them. And so the first book began really as a set of notes. And at some point I needed to put the notes together in a glossier form. And so it became a book. And then people began to write and say, my friend told me about that little book that she got. Can I get one? And that was when I began to think, oh gosh, other people would like to have this. Well, we'll need to cover the cost of the paper. And so the first book was born out of just something spontaneous. And it came out in 2013. There are now 15,000 copies. We eventually got a shop and we learned how to do that kind of website. And I'm telling the story that way so that other people understand. I didn't know how to do a lot of this when it started. We just followed as the demand grew and figured out how to meet that. And so the first book came out of the wish for other people to have it. And 7 years on, it seemed time to do a rewrite. And I am extremely excited. Can I share with you the thing I'm extremely excited about?
Please do.
The book has a spine. The first version didn't have a spine. It had staples, but this has a spine because it has more pages, so it needed a spine. And suddenly, when they came back in those boxes, I realized that the spine makes it feel like a new level of bookness. So I'm very excited, folks, about this spine.
We're getting some really lovely messages coming. Really nice. I know that we've got one or two of your ex-students from Dundee are tuned in and listening to you today. Why is this, and apart from being the author and a wonderful woman that you are, why is this a must-read for parents? And is it just for parents?
No, the book is absolutely not just for parents. Okay, I wrote this book, which is intended to be thin, because scientists have known about attachment and what became attachment theory since the 1940s. The big study of attachment began during the evacuation of children in World War II. And actually, it's really interesting that this book has come out now because we're doing a lot of thinking about World War II. And indeed, the Queen, when she gave us a message when all the lockdown was starting, remembered her message to children when they were being evacuated in World War II. And what happened at that point is that some scientists and psychoanalytically informed thinkers were getting worried about what was going to happen with this separation of parents from their children. The older children might have managed evacuation better, they thought, but they were really worried about the young ones, the children who were 3 and 4, and whether it would cause lasting damage because the children would be anxious separated from their parents. And so they were talking even then about the policies that we needed to keep children safe. And what we have learned since is that indeed the youngest children who were evacuated suffered in a way that the older children didn't always. And then in the 1950s, when we set up the NHS, which we've all been clapping, the standard policy was that parents were not allowed to stay with children in children's wards. And so there were people worried even then, because we understood more about attachment, that children's separation from their parents would cause emotional damage. And that's what happened. There are now people who live in our country, lots of people who were children at that age. They were affected for the whole of their lives by policy because it wasn't informed by relationships and emotional connection. But by then, we had attachment theory. And attachment theory got more and more and more in depth. By the 1970s, we had a whole model that went with that. Lots of people might know the name of John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. And lots of people who do childcare or nursing will get some training in attachment theory. But here's the thing, and here's why I've done that whole history. That's 1940s to now. Lots of people get training in attachment theory and they don't understand it. And that grieves me. And I'm right to be grieved because I'm one of the categories of professionals who should be making this available to people so they can use it. So I wrote this book in its first version and the retelling as a way of making it simple and easy and not scary for people to understand attachment. Now, you might use the language of trauma, you might use the language of connection. You could talk about the stress system and the self-regulatory system, but even some of that language feels off-putting for people. So I wanted to make this accessible to everybody, to parents, to people who make policy, to professionals in all sorts of sectors, so that they really understood attachment. They could feel it at a personal level, because when you understand that attachment is about everybody, it's about human beings, it's not just about young children, it's something that at all ages we keep with us and that influences us, then we understand just how important it is. And I just think everybody deserves to have this information. That's my...
Wonderful. I'm going to come back to you with some more questions in just a second. I'd like to introduce Donna now, who's one of our guests this morning. Hello, Donna. Good morning to you.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello, Donna. Now, Donna, you are a manager at Lullaby Lane Nurseries, one of Lullaby Lane Nurseries based in Scotland. And you have this wonderful idea, and you do it for every new parent that comes over the door. You give them a copy of this book. Well, you've given them a copy of the first edition. I take it you're now going to give them a copy of the second edition. Why did you take the decision to do that?
I think when we first read it as a team, it was a book that just realised how important attachment was. We're an attachment lane nursery, and we do a lot of training with Suzanne, and Suzanne's been in the nursery and working with us hard. And it wasn't just a book for parents. We thought the book was aimed for society, because we all know that attachment isn't just about the children in the nursery. It affects ourselves, and it gives us an understanding to why our behaviours are a certain way. So we thought it was important. I had the privilege of knowing attachment before I was a parent. So I had an advantage, but when we speak to some parents out there, they just don't know what attachment is, because it's not been given to them. So we feel that it's important when they join Lullaby Lane that they understand what our ethos is, why we do love the children and cuddle the children. So they have to understand that if we believe in that, and our parents are fully behind us, they get a chance to understand what they can do for attachment as a parent.
And your business is very attachment-led, isn't it?
Yes, our whole business is, and that's been led by our director, Pauline, with our parent companies and nurseries, and we are all attachment-led within the business and within the teams.
We'll get hold of Donna again. We'll come back to her in just a second. We have got Kara and Michelle, I believe.
Hi there, Gary.
Hello there. And how are you, Michelle?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you.
And you're from Craigmillar Books for Babies. Tell me a little bit about the business.
Yes. That's so lovely, Donna, listening to you and what drives you and your organisation to share the knowledge, because it really struck a chord, because it feels very much as though our charity comes from the same place. Our project is part of a wider charity called Craigmillar Literary Trust, and Craigmillar Books for Babies is a project that's we're going to be celebrating our 22nd year in the community this month. And Craigmillar Books for Babies is it's kind of grown alongside the knowledge that we've developed through Suzanne's work. It's been wonderful how the way Suzanne was talking about responding to things and like building her book out of this need and drive to share information. It feels as though it's just so similar with Craigmillar Books for Babies. Our project is very much about sharing information that we can get, because information's for everybody, and we are all about relationships. It's and if we are able to build those relationships through trust and connection, and through respect, then we're able to build a successful project that's been running now for 22 years.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And Kara, if I can bring you in for a second, you work with Michelle quite clearly. What do you think of the second edition of the book, Kara, from your professional point of view?
I have to say, I absolutely love it, Suzanne. I read it last night, and I was just so taken by it. I just really felt, and I agree with what you say, Gary, about the journey. I really felt the journey from the first edition to this second edition, and I thought it was wonderful how um, the expansion of the attachment theory to take into consideration the kind of more modern interpretations of attachment, and also bringing in the adverse childhood experiences into the book, and the wonderful stories that are also in the book. I just felt it was absolutely fantastic, and such a wonderful resource for us to have, because apart from the fact that it's absolutely jam-packed with the real meat of the theory, it's also so personable, and so it's full of empathy and compassion for people, and I just really welcome that about it. And also, one of the things that that I love about the book is just the practical nature of it. It's such a nice compact size. It's the kind of book that Michelle and I are often known to just pull it out of our bag if we're talking to somebody. It's the kind of book that you can just have with you at any point. It's not like a big textbook, or so I love that about it too. So yeah, well done, Suzanne. Really happy for you. It's such an amazing piece of work.
Wonderful. There's massive debates going on in the chat rooms. I have to say, I can see lots of messages coming up. Michelle, if I can just come back to you for just a second. I believe that both you and Kara are of the opinion that in Scotland, for people who maybe aren't aware of this, we have a thing that the government gives every new parent. It's a baby box. I think that's the correct name for it. And you think that it would be beneficial to put one of these books in every baby box going forward?
Yeah, well, yes. I've had a few conversations with our children's minister, Mary Todd, and strongly suggested that the book would be a very helpful addition to the baby box. I deliver a family support at home program, and in normal times, I'd visit families in their home, and it'd be wonderful to see their baby box there. And of course, I'm able to share the information that that we have about child development, and parents want to know this information. Every parent I've ever worked alongside wants the best for their child, and when I've suggested to Mary Todd that would be something that could underpin all the wonderful things that are in a baby box, her suggestion was that everything in the baby box is an attachment opportunity. But of course, from where I see it is that it doesn't explain the why, and what Suzanne's book does in the most amazing and clear way is explain the why of things, and I think that's what's been so important. Our journey in Craigmillar Books for Babies, and what Suzanne's offered through her generosity with her work, and how she's able to share all the work that she's done, is that we now understand the why of things, why a child does whatever, and I think that that on its own, the book's a book, but it comes alive when you're able to connect it with what it means.
Sorry, the chat room's going off the scale. I think Suzanne wants to come in here. Suzanne?
I'm just going to say that's a great place to bring Donna back in, because Donna could give us an example of how they put this information into practice in the nursery. So it demonstrates exactly what Michelle's saying. Donna, do you do that? Give an example of how it changed your practice, this knowledge.
I think it's changed our practice, as in we know the children under the age of 3 really need those moments of connection, they need that love, as a parent as well, you don't want your child to be put into nursery and not be loved and nurtured. So again, our giving Suzanne's book instantly gives the parent the insight of why we do it, and we talk about it in everyday practice at drop-offs and pickups, and that's not what we call them now. We're calling them welcome mornings, where the child is welcomed into us in the morning, and especially through this time of COVID-19, when if we are about to return, and what does that look like as an attachment line nursery? Because we can't social distance from the children, we know that could go on to damage the children as well. So again, we're now to the parents about transition, that how do you feel about your children still being loved and nurtured and cuddled? Because that's what children need. And I think that's the importance of it. And as being an attachment led nursery, as soon as a parent walks into the door to look at the nursery, to through the nursery, it's instantly what we say. We're an attachment-led nursery. We promote the love, we promote yoga, all these wee well-beings to help the children's mental health. And you think, like the babies, they don't need mental health. But again, it's later in life where we won't know what goes on in their lives. So we might not see the evidence of the benefits of attachment-led, but we know the society will realise how important attachment is across the nation and not just young children.
If I come back in one more time, Gary,
yeah, sure.
If I connect what Donna has just said with the time that we're living in now, okay, above the doorway at Lullaby Lane Nursery, there's a sign that says we're an attachment-led nursery and we give cuddles. Okay, so the team at Lullaby Lane, led by their leader, Pauline Scott, feels confident enough to say that a key value they have is cuddles. And they put that on a sign above their door. It doesn't say reading, it doesn't say maths, it doesn't say attainment, it says cuddles. Okay, and we have a big drive because we want to increase attainment, because there are lots of children in Scotland who are struggling in terms of their education. And so we can sometimes get concerned about that. And so it takes courage to put cuddles above your door. Okay, but now we have a new problem that we didn't have 2 months ago. We're now all scared to touch each other. We're actually scared of cuddles. Babies are born needing connection in order to thrive and feel safe and take adventures in the world. When schools come back and nurseries are seen as part of our education system, what will we do about the cuddles? This is a serious question. And for all that I love the party atmosphere of this morning, and I have wanted a party celebratory feeling, which is why we're going to end with a toast at the end of this, I also want us to think about the really serious end of this. What will we do about children who need cuddles because they're feeling scared? What will we do about children who want to stand close to their peers? We're thinking about social distancing, and I have learned about social distancing at the same rate everybody else has. I get that we can spread this virus by touching each other. And at the same time, children's mental health is underpinned by knowing that they can turn to adults for safety. And that comes often in the form of touch, especially for the youngest ones. If we don't think about the importance of emotional safety, along with physical safety, there will be new problems that come from coronavirus time that stretch into the whole of our children's lives. And so I did an analysis of the English documentation that has come out for bringing back the English schools. You can find that on my Twitter line. And so I looked at that documentation, and it has words like learning and virus and protection, but it never has any use of words like emotional safety, attachment, relationships. There are zero uses of those kinds of words. So I'm just trying to help us to think right now about the importance of thinking about connection and emotional and mental health as we design the policies that we bring children out of lockdown in. That's really, really important. If we teach children that other people are scary, then that will be built into their brain and their bodies, and they will carry that for the rest of their lives. So however we do this, we need to be sure that we're thinking about that as policymakers and as professionals. And I don't have the solution to all of that. But if I get from the cuddles above the door of Donna's nursery to the importance of this information in baby boxes, maybe in Scotland, what do we do with that information at a time of coronavirus? We need to keep all of that in our head. So it turns out that launching this book at this time was even, it turned out to be really useful in ways I never anticipated when I started the rewrite.
Well, let's go back to the book, because there are some new stories in there, as we've spoken about. And one is a really powerful story from Tony. And Tony joins us on the line now. I think Tony's in England. Good morning to you,
Hello.
Tony. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm in Brighton.
Oh, beautiful Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful Brighton. I love it. You are a fascinating chap, and we have only just met. But in my passions of broadcast, I've done a little bit of research about you. Tell me a little bit about you. First of all, who are you? What do you do?
So, you said I'm Tony Gammidge. I'm an artist and an art therapist. And I mostly make films now. So I use animation and filmmaking and storytelling, because I think stories are very, very important. And I work in quite difficult places, in prisons, secure units, with asylum seekers. So work with a lot of trauma and attachment issues, but also I tell my own stories.
I'd like to come on to that, because one of your stories and one of your films is featured in Suzanne's book, and the film that we're talking about is Norton Grimm and Me, and it's about your experience at boarding school and about how that affected you. Could you just tell us a little bit more about that and the background to the film?
So yes, I went to boarding school when I was about 7 or 8, so I was very young, in Scotland actually. So I made this, the film that you saw is the second film that I've made on that subject. And I think initially I wanted to make a film that challenged the normalization of sending any children away to boarding school. So it came out of a sense of frustration that even people who understand attachment theory think it's okay to do that. There's a sort of blindness around that. And also there was a kind of rage as well. At the sort of, it was all around the sort of the B word, Brexit word. Do you remember that? And how I felt all the politicians who were making these decisions had all been at boarding schools. So I felt we're making decisions from a place of conflict. And a place of dissociation, and look what happened in our society. It split the sort of, so it's a kind of political, motivation. So I wanted to make a film that was, I started with this idea that a child is abducted when they're sent to boarding school. So in a way, it's over dramatized, but I don't think it is over-dramatized. I think that's what it feels like internally. And so that was the starting point. But I think other things came out of it. I mean, including how I survived it, which was through the imagination, through being an artist, through telling stories. And I think that's been really helpful to me.
There was something really powerful for me, and I don't want to give too much away, because I really want people to see the film. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it, and I don't want to give too much away. But in the narration, there's something came out. You talked about normalized loss, grief, and trauma, and this was the powerful one for me: neglect dressed up as privilege. That was really strong for me. Your family have a history of sending children to boarding school, from what I can see from the film. Neglect dressed up as privilege. Could you just give me a little bit more insight into that?
Well, I think one of the problems for people who go to boarding school is they don't. For a lot of people, it's very traumatic. It was for me, but they don't feel that they can explore that or even feel bad about that because it's such a privilege. And I think it's called the double bind, really. So that, and also there's a huge amount of expectations put on the child by the parents. I know for my parents, it was a financial stretch, and we were very clear that that was what was happening. And so you can't really complain about it. You can't say that it's hell because it's seen to be a privilege. Yeah, I think my parents probably could have done with Suzanne's book, actually. Yes, but yeah, they didn't have that. They made a decision from a place of dissociation and what was expected in their society.
Suzanne, if I can bring you back in at this point, why did you decide to feature Tony's story in the book this time around?
Gary, I love that question because it helps people, I hope, to think about what stories should we tell. So when I rewrote the book, we were 7 years on, and I had tons of stories now to tell about how people were putting this information into action. So there are 2 chapters in the book, one on stories of personal change, and that's where Tony's story appears. So there's stories of people who are able to use this information on attachment and on trauma, and trying to link those two, because not everybody realizes that attachment and trauma are linked because it's got 2 different names. So I wanted to tell stories about how people felt they had benefited from putting this into action. And then there's a separate chapter on professional change. And so people who have used this information to change the way they do, you know, something professional. So, so lawyers, nursery staff, teachers, so that you can see how to put it into action. But to come back then to the personal stories and to Tony's story, I wanted to include a whole range of stories. When I saw Tony's film, I was so affected by the depth and shock with which he told a story that is very normalized for many people going off to boarding school. And the words that you picked up on that Tony requoted about neglect dressed up as privilege are the words of Nick Duffel, right? So other people are trying to help us to see a whole range of things and the impact of attachment. And what Tony and Nick and George Monbiot have to do is to look at boarding school. As I showed early drafts of the book to other people, they found Tony's story really shocking and hard to hear, which made me want to include it even more. Very often people think attachment is kind of sweet, and all these teddy bear images that I talk about makes it sound sweet. It's not sweet, where it's not only sweet. It's really, they're really serious stuff that underpins it. And Tony's film captured that for me. Well, I was really honored, Tony, when you said yes. And Tony and I worked hard to make sure that I got his story absolutely right. It's been a real act of trust for anyone to allow me to tell their story, and I wanted to get it right. And Tony's story for me took us to the edge. So if I can just read from the book, the key element that I think Tony's story said to me was captured in these few sentences, and Tony and I worked on these together to get them right. Tony agreed to the abduction. He tells the story of going off to boarding school as an abduction, as you already said, Tony. And I described it this way. Tony agreed to the abduction. He did not wish to shame his loving parents. He did not want to hurt them. He consented to the pain that their love caused him. I have chosen extremely edgy words to try to get us to see it. And in fact, I go on to say that I recognize that it may be hard to hear it put so starkly. And I recognize that other people's experiences of boarding school may have felt very different to Tony's. But I describe his experience in brusque tones because this is what Tony's film asks us to do, to hear his pain. And it is also what attachment theory asks us to do, to hear the distress that children often endure, even in the face of a parent's good intentions. Those are hard words, and it is scary for a parent to think about that. And it is courageous. So lots of people talk about when as a parent they learned this. They had to spend some time with uncomfortable feelings. Jennifer Riley's story is told in the book as a parent, and she talks about that. What I loved about Tony's story and Tony's film is that he lets us see that. He forces us to see that. And it was really important to him, to you, Tony, for me to make the point that his parents loved him. You can say this again yourself in a second. Tony said, I never felt like my parents didn't love me. And yet his loving parents made decisions that were hurtful to him. Tony's story lets parents not get it right, lets them listen to their children. And Tony, I love your film for that reason, which is why I wanted it in.
Tony, do you want to come back on that for just a second?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, it's true. I never felt unloved. And I think maybe that's something that when you get sent to a place where there is no love, and it's actually more fear-based than love-based, it's even more of a shock. But yes, it's never that I didn't feel loved, and I think it's been easier to tell this story now that my parents have died. So I remember I talked to my mum about it, and she was devastated, and she couldn't begin to look at that, and it made her feel very, very guilty and very upset. So it was not something I could really explore that much while she was alive.
Well, I want to thank all our guests for their wonderful contributions this morning. And don't go anywhere just yet, because if I can come back to Suzanne for a moment, I want everybody to have their glasses ready fairly shortly. But not just a rewrite, not just a second edition or a retelling of your journey, Suzanne, but the book is available and will be available in different formats. Tell us a little bit more about that so we can spread the word.
That's true. Up till now, we've only had the book available in print. But this time we decided to really push out the boat. And so as of this morning, people can find on the website that the book is available this time in 4 formats. You can still get it in print, and Pete tells me that we've sent out 230 odd packets in the last 3 days for people who wanted a hard copy of the book. But as of this morning, you can also get the book in ebook. So if you like your book on Kindle, you can now get it in that form. If you like your book online, that is you can see the book in a digital format, like almost like going to the library, and you have to read it in the library. The thing about an ebook is that you don't get the pictures, and Brett, our graphic designer, is very attached to the pictures that are in the book. So if you want to see a digital copy with the pictures, you can see that in an online version. And I've also recorded an audio version, and so that will be available for people. The really sad thing I have to say is that Amazon, and I know there are whole feelings about Amazon, that Amazon makes very quickly available audio files, and so that's who we've done the book with. But Amazon hasn't yet approved those files. So unfortunately, that version of the book is not available, but it will be as soon as they approve the files. And it lets us have it in 4 different formats. And we were just pleased for this book to reach people and this information to reach people in whatever format really worked for them. We thought that having it in other formats might especially help with it to easily reach an international market as well. So
No, I've got to say, I think one of the most powerful things about this morning, Suzanne, and I'm blown away by all the interaction that that people who are looking at this are doing. People are just talking to each other, they're communicating, they're attaching. It's just everything that you want, and they're sharing ideas and loving it. So so I'm sure that this won't be the first of our forays into live vodcasting, as it were. And one of the great things about this is that you've also involved children in the launch of the book, which is fantastic. Listen, it's what it's all about at the end of the day. And you've run a competition for young people to send in pictures of their favorite teddies. Now, I know that we can't have those on screen at the moment due to various sort of technical bits and pieces. However, I've got them here. And we've got 9 entries. The original idea, I understand, Suzanne, was to choose one as an overall winner. But let me just go through some of these. We've got Jessica, age 9, whose teddy name is Sully, and I love Sully because he was the first teddy I hugged, and when I hug him, I feel safe. We have Orla, aged 8, whose teddy is called Tiny. I love my teddy Tiny because it's my christening bear and it's very special to me. Joshua, do I need to pause after each of these, do I?
Celebrate creative children.
Right, Joshua, age 5 now, 6. His teddy Bug. I love that. I love Bug because he came home from school with me. His mom adds, and he's been here throughout the whole of lockdown.
Well done, Joshua!
Now we have Caleb. Forgive me, Caleb, aged 8. Beautiful name, Teddy. Ted. I love him because he makes me feel safe. It's lovely, isn't it?
That's what
Sarah, age 4. Susie the unicorn she sends in.
Yes.
It's fantastic. It's beautiful. And Sarah loves Susie the unicorn because she is 2 of my favorite colors.
Sarah's 4. And her mom helped her to draw her favorite teddy unicorn and send her in. Like, I think that's fab.
Alice, age 7, sends in Teddy. That's the name of the teddy. Teddy, I love it. And simply says, he is cuddly.
He is cuddly, and that will help Alice to feel safe. So thank you, Alice.
Noah, aged 7, Pikachu Teddy, love it. It makes me happy and he's a good friend.
Thank you so much.
Summer, aged 11, Good Luck Care Bear in green. I like Good Luck Care Bear because I've had this bear ever since I was a baby. So that was Summer, aged 11.
Summer, thank you so much.
Oh, and finally, we have Lily, who's aged 7, who sends a beautiful picture of Lotso, Lotso. I love him. Oh, I love him because he smells like strawberry. He is soft and cozy. There is another part of the story that is added here from Mom Heather, and they've allowed us to share this. Mom adds, he came from Granny. Granny died this month from COVID. She had Alzheimer's and lived in a care home. So a really prominent and poignant part of that story for Lily and Lotso, and for Heather as well. And Heather, thank you for sharing that with us, because there'll be lots of people, I am sure, around the country, people who are viewing this who are in similar situations. So thank you for sharing that.
And Gary, sharing that whole set of stories. And so you've all just heard me going, yay. Because just the children's competition, and it's not even a competition anymore because we were going to draw names, but guys, I can't bear to do that. So all of the children who sent us a teddy bear, I'm going to send you all a book signed by me to say thank you, because it takes courage actually to decide to send a drawing. People might not think your drawing is good enough. So it takes courage to decide to draw one of the most important people to you, your teddy, and to send it off to somebody that you don't know. So the children who've drawn their teddies have trusted me, and they trusted their parents in saying to them that they thought this was a good idea to send in their teddy. So I'm just going to send books to everybody. Here's one other element to that. People can think that teddies are sweet, but the point of what the children have just told us is that their teddies help to keep them safe. And I put out on my Facebook page this morning an article about how teddies do that. And it's one of the reasons that I really value Lily's story and that I wanted to bring it in this morning, because it really helps us to get it. It's like the impact of Tony's story. If we can look at the edgier, more uncomfortable parts, we get how important this is. Lily's teddy was given to her by her granny, who died in the care home. And we've seen those numbers. Lily's story helps to remind us that they are not numbers. They are not only numbers. They are people who are loved. And so now Lotso will come to represent Granny. And so Lotso is not just a teddy bear. Lotso is a relationship and a representation of the relationship. That's why teddies matter. And that's why if we understand the importance of comfort, we understand how to tackle saber-toothed tiger moments. And we haven't even used that language of tigers this morning. So let me just bring it in there. Saber-toothed tiger moments are the moments that are hard and scary, and they create stress in our bodies. And those feelings are not just to be managed. We often talk about managing sadness or anger, or I don't like that word, manage. It's really about comforting it. So comfort is what lets us deal with those really hard emotions. It's teddies that are in charge of comfort. And so it's teddies who chase away saber-toothed tigers. And Lily's story helps us to think about that. Thanks for telling it, Gary.
You know what? I think that's a lovely way to end the morning. It's been wonderful. I've got to say, I'm blown away by a lot of the comments that are coming through. There is one final thing for us to do. First of all, is for us to say congratulations to you, Suzanne, for this. It is fantastic. It is a must read, and I'm sure that there'll be another 15,000 plus copies going out very, very soon. Spread the word, and you never know, the message might even get through to our friends in government. It might end up in baby boxes in Scotland. You never know. And thank you to our guests. You've been absolutely wonderful. Your stories are absolutely inspiring. And it's been a great way to spend a Saturday morning. One last thing to do. I know that we can't see everybody who's on the vodcast, but we can see our contributors. Do you have your glasses at hand? I've certainly got mine. Now I don't. I've got this. That's a dainty little glass there. I like that. So has everybody got your glass? And we on 3, we will just say cheers. And hopefully everybody who's on the vodcast in the UK and around the world is doing exactly the same as we do it. So in 3, 2, 1, cheers.
Cheers.
Congratulations, Suzanne. Thank you very much indeed for letting me be part of it. Once again, thank you to our guests, and thank you to our viewers in the UK and around the world for joining us this morning. Suzanne, one final word from you. Cheers, Brett.
By reading. Brett, can you?
In fact, we've got to say thank you to Brett for doing all the work behind the background and all the technical work, because if it wasn't for Brett, we wouldn't have got off the ground this morning. So Brett, it was, although I know you didn't mean to be in shot there, but it was well worth it. It was great to see you.
I was going to read simply the last line of the book, because in a sense, I hope that that is another key message people will take away, and it seems a great one to end on after our cheers. Let's end with this tip that any of us can call on the next time we feel anxiety creeping up. So here is the last line of the book. Saber-toothed tigers are scared off by the sound of giggling. With lots of laughter. So thank you, everyone. I have been delighted to have you join me in getting this book off to the rest of the world.
Suzanne Zeedyk, thank you very much indeed. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Suzanne. Bye.
Bye.